So again, most of what's on this, and all of what's on this is on your quiz. Most of what's on your quiz is on this, but not all of it. So you also want to review your warm-ups, your homeworks, that kind of stuff for your quiz. So the very beginning, this part, and the answers are already posted to this, so I'm not collecting it. This is all from R.1. This is distance formula, midpoint formula, and then classifying your triangles. So it's going to ask you to find the lengths of all three sides and then classify it. This example is a right triangle, so you're doing a squared plus b squared equals c squared, but also be prepared for an equilateral or an isosceles. If it's equilateral, you're looking for all three sides the same. If it's isosceles, you're showing two. We good on R1? Yeah. And then this stuff all came from R2. This and the circles came from R.2. So in R.2, it's asking for your intercepts. Remember, x-intercepts, we plug 0 in for y. Y-intercepts, we plug 0 in for x and find the corresponding y. And then x-axis symmetry, we change y to be negative y. Y-axis, we change x to be negative x. And origin, we change both. And in each case, after we simplify, we're looking for what? How would you know it's symmetric to the test?
It's the same or exact.
Good. If every term is the same or it goes back to exact opposite, every single term's exact opposite, then it would be symmetric to those specific axes. You had questions on circles where it was like this, where I gave you the equation and I asked you to get the information out of it. Hopefully these are the easy ones. Don't make a foolish mistake here, okay? Don't forget to square root the r squared, something like that. But then you also had the questions where you were given points. One was you were given the center and a solution point. And you had to find the equation, and one was where you were given the endpoints of a diameter. And you had to find a solution point. So make sure you know how to, you had to find the equation, sorry. Make sure you know how to do one of that. I'll do an example on the video of one of those because I think we rushed the one that was on the notes too. And then all this stuff is 1.1, which is what we just covered on the warm-up today. The equations of the lines, parallel, perpendicular, slopes, all that stuff. The only other thing that's not on this review that is on your quiz is the scatter plots. Make sure you know how to make a scatter plot. Make sure you know how to make decisions or inferences based on a scatter plot. Questions on expectations for your quiz? So I can't get all of it on the video, but I'm going to at least talk through. If you go to Canvas, you go to modules, and then you go to general class info module. Underneath where it says textbook, you see web assign. If you click on that, you get brought to a sign that says launch external tool. You're going to click on that, and then you're going to click on create account the first time, enter in your information, and then you should end up at a screen that looks like this. Anybody still spinning? Okay. So what you should see is there's two ways to access your assignments. Well, there's probably more than that, but at least for me, the obvious ones are right here underneath current assignments. You'll see one that's there. And then up here you have a My Assignments tab, so you can also access them there. For today, you're going to click on the name of the assignment. So your homework will be named the way that it is in Canvas. So Wednesday's homework will be named as 8.29 homework 1.2 homework. And you'll click on it. Okay, today we are doing this for practice. So you're not submitting anything to Canvas for me today, but we're going to walk through the steps so that you can kind of practice and see what you get. So once you click on it, you should see a series of questions, which mine loads super slow, but you can get an idea. There's only 4 questions today, okay? At the very top, it'll tell you how many questions there are. Your name should be all the way at the right. So we're going to just do a couple of these to get, I'll give time to work on them. But when you go to type things in, kind of pay attention to what you're typing in. If I wanted to answer this question here, I would just click into that box, and then these tools sometimes pop up and sometimes they don't. If they pop up, use them to format your answer. So like if I want to do a fraction, I would click on this and I would type in a fraction. If they don't pop up, just type it like normal text. So if I was going to do a fraction, I could do 1-2 like that. Pay attention to how they're formatted, because there's one, like number 2, it says to insert the y-intercept, and it gives you the parentheses already. So the boxes you're filling in, you don't want to type a parenthesis. You type a parenthesis, it'll mark it wrong. Not that it's a huge deal, but it will mark it wrong. So you want to pay attention to formatting, things like that. What else? And then the graph is kind of glitchy. So we're going to do the best we can with it today. If it doesn't make sense, then we're going to just graph it in Notability. Same thing for when you do your homework. So you will get the questions from WebAssign, but you will work in Notability. So what I want you to do is when you open it up, and you can kind of practice the format today, screenshot your questions, as many in a picture as you want. If you want to do them one at a time, do them one at a time. But you're going to screenshot your questions, and then you're going to pull them into Notability. So your numbers might be different, but the process should be the same. For like 1, you want to take that point and slope, and I plug it into point slope. You can plug it into y equals mx plus b, but you got to plug in the x, the y, and the m, and then get the b, and then plug back in the m and the b. Either way, your answer should look like this, okay? Or in that format, but your numbers might be different. And then I plotted based off the first thing because those were whole numbers. So I went to -6, -2, and then I used the slope of 4/5, so I went up 4 and to the right 5. So my note could look something like this. So I pulled the question in Notability, and I literally did the work on it. I graphed right on here in Notability. And then you'll go back to WebAssign to enter in your answers and let it score it, okay? You get 3 tries for each question. 80 or above with work is an automatic 100 in my book, okay? If you get under an 80, so on that top box, if you get 1 wrong, it'll score it. If you get under 80, I'm looking for your work. So if you did under 80 and it's because you accidentally typed a 12 over 5 instead of a 14 over 5, but you have your work, you're still going to get the credit for it, okay? The only time you're going to lose the homework credit is just like you would now. You got it wrong and you have no work. Does that make sense? So we're doing this a couple different reasons. One is after you're done with your assignment, you could generate as many practice problems from this as you want. So if you know you're struggling on this one, you could say extra practice problems, and it will give it to you with the answers. 2, high schoolers tend to cheat like crazy on homework. Shocker, I know, not you guys, but everybody else, okay? So this generates random questions, which means that the numbers at the top are going to change, okay? So you might have a different question from your friend. So if it has a different answer, don't panic, okay? This hopefully takes the pressure off the kid that like does all the work and then feels like they have to share it to be a good friend and then gets a 0 because I catch them cheating. Third is if I've asked alumni what's the hardest transition into college, they'll tell me math online. So almost every kid that we asked, I had my students interview college kids last year on their math class. Almost every single one of them had some sort of online component when doing the homework. FIU is full lab homework, which means they have to sit at a computer and do all of their work on it. So things like formatting gets them points off because they accidentally put an X capital instead of lowercase. So if we can help ease into that transition, that would be a big goal of mine, especially in an environment in which I still care if it's glitching for you. So if it's glitching, you have a fail safe, which is that Notability, you're going to show me your work, okay? But hopefully by the time you get around to college, you don't get anxiety when you see math online, because it's going to happen. So when you're done with your homework, I think I have it. When you're done, after each question, you're going to see a little thing that says, I think it's cut off, but it says, submit just this question, save progress. So every time you answer a question, save your progress, because whether you start your homework now and then finish it later tonight, you don't want to have to restart that whole assignment. You want to be able to save the progress you already had. So if you save your progress, it will save it as you go. If you want to submit it to see if it's right, you can submit it and then you can change it and then you can submit it up to 3 times if you're that type of person that really needs to get 100%, even though I'm telling you, you don't have to get 100%, okay? But at least you can know why it is you've gotten what you got wrong. When you're done, you're going to screenshot the top of your screen just like this. So you see my score is up here. It will give you the overall score. My name is here so that I can tell that it's me. And you're going to put this at the top of your Notability document like this with your work at the bottom. And then you're going to turn this into Canvas, okay? So I can go in on the WebAssign side and see each of your individual scores. So if I ever question your integrity, like if you ever feel like you're super smart and pull a screenshot over there with your name, but it's somebody else's work, I can check on your end what you did, but all 4 of my class periods are all mixed in together, so it's way easier for me to check the majority of it in Canvas. Does that make sense? Yeah, okay. So overall, do we understand the process? You're in the homework, I'll link directly to the module. So every time I take you back to the module, WebAssign, assignment, get the questions, work on it, Notability, screenshot your answers at the end, or screenshot your score at the end, and then submit everything back to Notability. So today we're doing just for practice, okay? You don't have to submit anything to Canvas today. There's no pressure. If it doesn't work, it's not right, breathe. It's just for practice. But I'm not going to be at home with you on Wednesday night when you go to do this the next time, so I want to make sure I run all the way through it. Give you.
-6, -5, and the slope is 2/3.
Okay, so if it gives you that information and it wants the equation of the line, right? So this is my x1, this is my y1, that's my m. So I would do y minus y1 equals mx minus x1. So y minus a -5 becomes +5 equals 2/3. X minus a -6 becomes +6. Distribute your 2/3. So 2/3 x plus 3 goes into 6 2 times, so it's just 2 times 2, which is 4. And then subtract your 5. And you get y equals 2/3 x minus 1. So then when you go to graph that, you can either do the 6, -5, and the slope. So -6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, about there, up 2 to the right 3, and there's your line. Or you could use -1, which is here, up 2 and over 3, and it would run along that same point. So you can use either pieces of information to graph your line. You're just graphing your line. For 2, it gave you 2x plus 3. Well, mine was 2x plus 3y equals 9. So there's two ways to get slope from standard form. The shortcut, which is -a/b, which would be -2/3 in this case. Or you can solve the equation for y, which actually gets you both the y-intercept and the slope. So in this case, it was easier. So the m is what's in front of the x. That 2/3 would go in that little. And if it doesn't give you the tools, then you use the /. And then the point would have been 0, 3. And then again, start at 0, 3, go down 2, and to the right 3. So we're feeling okay on those, yeah? Okay. Okay, so it wants the equation, right? So y minus a -4 becomes +4 equals 4/5. X minus a -3 becomes +3. Distribute. And then subtract the 4. So this is y equals 4/5 x. This becomes 20/5. So -8/5. So if it said to do perpendicular, from this you need your slope, which would be -5/2, which is 5/2. So the slope of a parallel line would be the same, but perpendicular is going to be opposite reciprocal, -2/5. And then I would do y minus a -1 becomes +1 equals m x minus 2/7. Then distribute. And then subtract the 1. This is 35/35. So this is -31/35. You find your mistake?
I added wrong.
Okay. It's always something silly like that. Okay, so there was a question similar to this. It's going to be different numbers for you depending on what question you have. But there was a question similar to this where you had to adjust the scale of your window. Yes? It looks familiar. If you don't have your handheld graphing calculator yet, don't worry because you're not using it on tomorrow's quiz anyways. I would use the graphing calculator and I would pinch and zoom out until the left side and the right side equal these scales. So this first one says the x min is -5, the x max is 5. That means from the left side of my graph, I want to go to -5. To the right side, I want to go to 5. And I do that by pinching and zooming left and right, okay? And then the x or the y min is -10 and the x min is +10. That means I adjust it vertically. When you go to this one, it changes to like -40 to +40. So I'm going to show you what that looks like on the graph. Okay, so I took a picture because it said I needed to answer questions based on a graphing utility. So every time that happens, I need you to actually take a picture of the graph, pull it in, and then answer the questions accordingly. So I pulled them all in. Now I'm going to show you how to do it with your handheld. So if you have your handheld graphing calculator and you want to take it out and you don't know how to adjust the window, now's a good time. If you don't, I'm putting it on the video. Make sure you practice it, okay? Because eventually you're going to do this all on your own. Not for tomorrow's quiz. No calculators in tomorrow's quiz, but just so you get the idea. Okay, so in my calculator, I'm going to hit the y equals. This is where I plug in my graph. So -4x plus 6, and everybody does a minus here. This has to be a negative, which is this button. Okay, -4x plus 6. And then I hit graph to see what it looks like. And then my window's already adjusted, but the way you adjust a window is you come over here to window. And the first one said this. I wanted my x min to be -5 to 5, my scale to be 1, my y min to be -10 to 10, and my scale to be 1. And then again, go back to the graph. And then if I was putting this in the homework, I would literally just take a picture of that and pull it into the homework. With me so far? So if I want to change that, I'm going to go back to window. The second one was -5 to 5, scale of 1, but the y min was -40 to +40, and the scale is 10. And then I go to graph. So each tick mark is 10. That's what scale means. So that's 10, 20, 30, 40, okay? And then I go back to y. This time I want -5 to 13. I want the scale to be 1, and I want it to be -6, 12, and I want the scale to be 1. And then I go back to my graph. So that's the third one. Questions on that process? So sometimes you're going to see questions where it literally tells you what your scale is, and you just type it in like that. Sometimes you're going to get a graph of like a cubic function or a square root function or parabola, and some of your graph is cut off, and you need to readjust to make sure the whole thing's there. That's going to be where you have to figure out your scale. I would say your typical scale, you want to keep square, so you want to go from -10 to +10, -10 to +10, scale being 1. And then you can adjust it if you need to. Questions on scale adjustment? Let me work through this one, the scale, which in this case, the first window is the best, and it's because it gives the y-intercept, it's relatively square, and it gives the x-intercept. But that will never be a quiz question. I just want you to know it so that when you have to do questions where you have to adjust your scale, it will be there. And then this one, so this is the one that gives you 2 parts. It's going to be worth more than other questions, so you want to make sure you know how to do both parts well. So it says write the slope-intercept form of the equation of the line through the given point and parallel to the given line, and then write the slope-intercept form of the equation of the line through the given point perpendicular to the given line. So I need this line for its slope only, so I do -a over b, which is a -3, and I get the slope of my initial line is 5/3. So then I'm going to take that and the point that's given, because if it's parallel, what's true about the slope? It's the same. So for A, M is 5/3, and my point is 3/8, -1. So this is my x1, this is my y1. And I'm going to plug it into point slope. So y minus a -1 becomes +1 equals M, which is 5/3, x minus 5/8. Y plus 1 equals 5/3, x minus 15. Actually, the 3's would cross out, and I get just 5/8. And then I would subtract the 1, and I get y equals 5/3 x. 1 would be 8/8, and they're both negative, so I add them, negative 13/8. So that would be my equation if it's parallel and it passes through the point 3/8. Today's you don't need to. Today's just a warm up. But homework-wise, you'll submit the note with the score at the top to a upload question. I mean, an upload assignment on Canvas. And then I'm going to do that whole process again, but this time it's perpendicular, which means what's true about your slope? Opposite reciprocal, right? So if my initial slope is 5/3, then the slope of a line that's perpendicular would be? Negative 3/5. Good. So y minus a negative 1 becomes plus 1 equals negative 3/5 x minus x1, which is 3/8. So then I distribute the slope. And then I've got to subtract the 1. So 1 is the same thing as 45/45, and I get y equals negative 3/5 x, positive 9, and negative 45 is a negative 36/45. And that can be reduced because 9 goes into both of those. So I could have reduced it here, or did I do that right? This should be 40. 40/40. And that should be 31/40, sorry. And that's your equation. So everything, I was going to say, like, besides the scale, everything on this warm-up assignment is going to be on your quiz. Make sure you know how to do it all, okay? And then as far as the rest of your quiz goes, okay, so it says A, find the equation of a line that's parallel, right? Parallel to this one that passes through that point. B, find the equation of a line that's perpendicular to that one that passes through that point. So the first thing I want to do from this equation is simply just get the slope, and that's the shortcut. So M equals negative A over B. That's only if it's in standard form, which is negative 3 over negative 2 this time, which means 3/2. So when I do my parallel one, again, I'm going to divide it. So I'm going to do the parallel one on this side. M is the same, right? 3/2. And B, we're talking perpendicular, so now the slope would be what? Negative 2/3. Good. So then I take that and that point and plug it into point slope. So again, y minus y1 equals M x minus x1. So I get y minus a negative 1 means plus 1. Mm-hmm. To get the slope from the beginning? Sure. Yeah, so if you don't remember the shortcut or you're unsure about it, just solve it for y equals mx plus b, and then just take the m. Don't use anything else.
Okay. Wait. It says direct the slope intercept one.
Right, but from that first equation, the only thing you're taking from it is the slope. Okay. Then you have to use that slope with this point to find the other equations. Yeah. So now I got m is 3/2 x minus 2/5. And then I'm going to distribute 3/2, so y plus 1 equals 3/2 x minus, these two cancel out, 3/5. And then subtract the 1. So y equals 3/2 x, this is 5/5, so negative 8/5. So that's the equation of the line that's parallel to the first one. And then perpendicular, now I'm using this slope and this point. So y minus a negative 1 becomes plus 1 equals negative 2/3 x minus 2/5. Take and distribute that in. So y plus 1 equals negative 2/3 x plus, because it's a negative times a negative, 4/15. And then subtract the 1, which turns into 15/15. And I get y equals negative 2/3 x minus 11/15. And that's the perpendicular. So this is parallel and this is perpendicular. So you can go back in there, like later, if these are the ones you're shaky on, you can go back in there and keep trying them. There's some on your quiz review, but you can also get back into this assignment and always do extra practice. So these will be on the video. It'll go through each one. The answers for all the ones that are evens that were, right, because it was some odds mixed in there, just the evens. The odds are on CalcChat, so make sure you check your odds on CalcChat. Hopefully this will be one of the last assignments we do there. The rest of them will be on WebAssign where you get your own answers. Like it will give it to you past the due date. It will give you the answers, so you can check your individual work.